Welcome to the Connectors podcast, the show that helps you build meaningful connections and transform your life. I'm your host, Quinton Sheriff, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jolyn Showalter. Do you want to reinvent yourself and grow your mindset? Do you want to make valuable connections and community and take your life and work to the next level? Then this podcast is for you. Join us as we explore the world of reinvention and uncover how it can lead to more meaningful connections.
Good morning. Hello, and welcome to the Connectors. Today we have an awesome guest joining us, my friend and also mentor, Laurie Hawkins, and I'd like to give her a proper introduction. Laurie is a passionate and powerful coach whose unique blend of practical and magical brings incredible transformations for all who she works with. She's a certified business success strategist, speaker, radio show host, trainer, and leader who drives revenue, results, and raving fans along with fulfillment and flow. Love that. Laurie's reputation is built on her unique ability to enable strategy and soul to coexist. She's a thought leader with her rare ability to both inspire and create actionable strategies. An award-winning leader in business for more than 30 years, Laurie uses her unique combination of practical strategies and magical inner work to guide high-level leaders and business owners to become masters of their destiny and truly excited about their lives. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here with you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, we're really glad to have you here on the show. Just a little bit of background because we like to sort of talk about the connection and how we know each other. And both Quinton and I know Laurie through our reinvention community as well. So we've all met through our certified program and through the Canadian Alliance. And now we wanted to share Laurie's experiences and stories with you on the show because she has an amazing, extensive background in all kinds of areas. So yeah, thank you for being here.
It's so fun. I love what you're doing. And I love that you introduce how we connect, considering the connectors. So thrilled to be here with you and all your guests today.
Thank you. So shall we jump right into our wins of the week and our fails of the week? Who's going to start first? Who's got a win?
Let's let our guests go first.
Oh, wow. I love this question. I think that we should always do this. First of all, we should always sit down every week and think about what was the one big win and what was the big lesson. So for me, my win was I happened to be out shopping at Costco, and all of a sudden I heard my name being called, Laurie. And I turned and I didn't know where it was coming from. And then I just figured, oh, they must be talking to another Laurie. And then I heard again, Laurie. And I look and this woman is all excited to see me. And all of a sudden I remember her face, but it's from a long time ago. And so she says, it's so-and-so. We used to work together in telecommunications. And so she introduced me to her husband and we got talking for a little bit. And at the end, she said to her husband, this is the woman I've always told you about. She's who I embody my leadership style after because she taught me how we could be different in a corporate world. And I got in my car with my husband. I cried.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because there's lots of weeks where you're not sure if you're having the impact you hope to have. And I worked with her over 20 years ago. So to just run into her and have her share that with me was really good for the soul.
And how thoughtful, right? Because that's something, again, we talk about on the show is just that, those ways in which we reach out to each other. And it's nice to hear you're appreciated or someone to like come back after all that time and say what an impact they had on you. Like how awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. That's a good win. Good win.
Yeah. How about you, Jo?
I'm going to say this past week for me has been, this probably has something to do with the weather, just because I'm a sun goddess, is what I like to say. And I just felt my happiness factor had accelerated quite significantly. But I'm also going to attribute that to, I think it's just the the consistent habits that I've been creating lately. And I feel like I'm just really starting to see the benefits of having these good habits every day that really bring me joy. So I'm going to say that was my win for the week so far.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah. How about
Mine, I finished 2 big work projects, and they were really satisfying to wrap up. One was building a website for someone, and I showed it to her, and her reaction was just spot on. I felt so happy at the end of that. And then another one was finishing off a big sort of progression and curriculum for a customer service department, and I just know it's going to help the people in that department, and I just feel great about that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Congrats. What
Thank
an
you.
accomplishment for the week.
Thank you. And how about some fails? Did anyone have anything that they thought, oh, I need to learn something from that?
Always. Always. How about you, Laurie? Do you have
these are so often throughout the day. These are easy. Isn't it funny how it's easier to think of the fails than the wins normally? So for me, the biggest fail is I find it really difficult when there's technology issues. And so this week we had some technology issues, and so just adapting to that. And although there's ways in the world to adapt to that, it's not easy. In the moment, it's not easy. And so then really reflecting on, what is that teaching me? What am I meant to learn from the pause? Because clearly I'm not supposed to do something in that moment that I thought I was going to be doing. So really learning to hear that, instead of getting into frustration or chaos that it can create, to really slow down and say, what am I learning from this? And what is it teaching me? And how can I pause and just lean into that? So that was my this week lesson.
I love the pause. Yeah. I'm learning that more and more, that sometimes we're so used to just going from one thing to the next, right? And when you stop and just take a minute, you really see things a little bit more clearly or from a different perspective. Even just going for a walk, that really clears your head.
Yes.
So I love the idea of the pause, and that we don't have to be multitasking and jumping from thing to thing to thing. It actually serves us better to not. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
I hear you. Yeah. Interestingly, that's my downer, is I didn't do much exercise at all this week, and I feel bad for it. I took like 2 bike rides, that's it. So I'm getting on a long bike ride today.
But it sounds like you were focused on work too. So, it's I guess sometimes something has to give a little bit for the other, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get that. Exactly. I get that. Mine, I'm going to say, I went paddleboarding for the first time last weekend, and they didn't put the dock back in the water. So it's at a conservation area close to London, and there's like a dock you can launch off your like paddleboards or your kayaks or canoes, and they didn't put it back in the water. So I had to launch from the shore, and it was kind of on a bit of a cliff, and you have to sort of jump down. And I stepped on my board, and my fin broke because it got caught in the mud. Yeah. So, my lesson is also to slow down. I think sometimes I just I can do this, and I just jump right in without thinking of all the, I guess, the risks or the things that might happen. And I should have known that was a possibility. So, but anyway, I have to buy a new fin.
Yeah. Can you still paddle on it, or do you just
no, it was hilarious because the minute because you paddle one way and then it completely turns, and then you paddle the other way and it completely turns. So I basically was just doing
very
this
annoying.
Back and forth. So I just said, okay, I'm just going to sit right here and lay in the sun for a bit, and then I'll come back. I wasn't making it too far. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Love it.
So Laurie and I have been talking monthly. I had asked Laurie if she wanted to be my mentor last year, and I just know how much of her background is. She has some similar things in corporate, and she's made a lot of different moves in her life and reinvented herself. And let's talk a little bit about your journey, Laurie, and I don't know if you want to go back as far as when you were in corporate, but some significant areas of your life, you've had some big reinvention and changes, and what did that look like for you?
I think it is interesting how aligned we are in sort of what you're experiencing at similar times. I would have experienced it. So I was in corporate. I was a corporate leader. And it's so funny. I ran into this woman too before we were doing our show about reinvention, because she just reminded me of that period in time. And I was raising kids, blending a family. So talk about reinvention. We do not have enough time to go down that rabbit hole today. There's a lot of reinvention that happens when you blend a family. And so I'd been asked to move to Toronto as a VP, and it just did not align with where I felt I wanted to be as a family and life. And so I had to make a tough decision. It was either move up or kind of move out. And so I left corporate, and I had this beautiful naive spirit that would be easy. I don't really know what I was thinking. Actually, when I look back, sometimes you just leap. And so I ended up deciding I would start my own business, and that I would do what I did in corporate leadership, and I would apply that to helping many sort of medium-sized businesses that don't have that expertise, but a real passion to help more people. And that was tough. It was tougher than I expected, and really had to lean into what reinvention is all about, of really ground zero, and learn who I was in a different way, because who you are as a business owner and who you are as a corporate leader are two really, you bring your core values, but you're still it's a really different experience. And through that time as well, I actually met with, which similar to your process, Joe, is going through just talking to people. I think I met with 30 people who owned their own business at the time, and just picked their brains, and how did you succeed, and what did it look like, and how did you have this elusive balance, and all of those things. The one good thing was I actually came from a sales background. So I think the part that so many entrepreneurs struggle with is how to go out and open doors and sell. That part was never a challenge because I had that background. So I was grateful for that. So that's probably, really the biggest reinvention I've gone through in my life, for sure. And then COVID, and my business overnight changed. So I had a thriving consulting coaching business, and that was all live. So when COVID hit, it was, how do I take what I do and reinvent it in a way that can support where the world is going? And that really has been more of an evolution than an overnight reinvention. It just has taken more learning, more growing, more curiosity than ever, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Just staying open, right? I just wanted to circle back to what you're saying, though, about I think that transition from, working for someone else to working for yourself. And I've heard of this term of unbossing. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's like unbossing yourself from being told what to do in an environment where you have a leader or a boss, to becoming your own boss. And I'm just wondering, so you said you had lots of conversations with others, you jumped into learning as much as you could. What are some things you felt that maybe you didn't even know that were happening, but you were kind of unbossing yourself and becoming your own boss?
What a unique term. I will say, the great privilege of when I was in corporate. I started my career with a really entrepreneurial, Sprint Canada was where I started in leadership. And so they were young, they were vibrant, they were fluid, and they were entrepreneurial. And so as a leader, I led part of the country. I got to be the same. So I could call the CEO any day and have a really great conversation and go back and forth and pick his brain. And there was always that conduit. And we were able to be flexible and work with opportunities in a really entrepreneurial way. And so I didn't have to unboss quite as much but then we were purchased by a big beast. One of the biggest telecom company in Canada purchased us. And so I spent 3 years going through that integration from entrepreneurial to very corporate, another reinvention phase, I guess, even just in that world. And what I knew for sure is that was not anything that embodied the type of leadership I would even take into my own business. So I think a lot of people start their own businesses thinking it's more of a passion, it's more of a project versus it's a business. So the unbossing thing is actually, that could be a bit dangerous because you do need to view it as a business, which means you're the leader. So out of the gate, it was, I need to design the business where I am the leader still. I've always hated the word boss. So I think I'm feeling.
Yeah, me too.
I say leader at work. Yeah.
And they would call me boss. I'm like, never. Do not call me boss. We're collaborators no matter what. We just have different responsibilities. And one of the biggest things I think that I studied early was the E-Myth. I don't know if you've heard of the E-Myth.
No, what's that?
You've heard of the statement, work on your business, not in your business. And so that it comes from the E-Myth. The E-Myth is a book that teaches you how to set up an entrepreneurial business like a business. And so I was introduced to that early on and just designed the business that way. So I don't know if that answers it, kind of.
No, it does. No, that's really helpful. And I think even
entrepreneurs work in the business too much. So I think looking at like dentist is a great example, right? The dentist is the doer. So they're running a business or trying to, but they're also in the business almost 100% of the time. So anytime you start your own business, you need to look at it from that perspective as, where's my leadership time? I'm actually going to work on the business and not always in the business.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that. And just even as Quentin and I have been creating the podcast, like we're recognizing this is our business, right? So we're trying to look at things more and more every week we meet, we try to look at it from that perspective of like, okay, what do we need to do next to keep things, going, and what's relevant and how are we going to keep up? And so
that's a great example because when you're working on the business, so that's you as the leaders, but then right now today you're working in the business, you're the technician.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And sometimes we got to get together and we got to put on different hats and talk about what the business has got to go through for the next week. And then sometimes we're just enjoying the moment and the process like now and having a great conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
You can find us on Twitter at The Connectors, on Facebook at The Connectors Podcast, and on LinkedIn at The Connectors Podcast as well. Or reach out by email at theconnectorspodcast@gmail.com.
So I see you refer to yourself online as the alignment alchemist, which I find is very cool. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, and what alignment means to you and how you came up with that term.
Well, I've been struggling with this whole balance thing. And it's not a new conversation. I think for 30 years I've been in business, the conversation has always been, how do you find balance? And it never made sense to me because, I was a busy mom and I was a leader. And I remember I would be going to work and I would feel so guilty about being at work and not being what I thought was a good mom at the time. And then I'd be with my kids and I would feel guilty because I wasn't responding to some email I thought I should respond to like immediately, which we shouldn't feel that way. And so I just was feeling this pull and everyone's saying you have to find this work-life balance. And I literally one day just sat down and said, I'm done. I'm stopping this type of behavior. It's not good for me. When I am at work, I will be fully present. And when I'm with my kids, I will be fully present. But that's never 50-50. I mean, sometimes you have to give 90% to your career and what you're growing. And sometimes you're going to want to go to the basketball game and not be at work and give 90% to what your kids need. So through the sort of evolution of that, this word alignment more was coming up for me. And so I stopped believing that balance was possible, which should be 50-50. The definition that kept coming up, I didn't really know it was alignment. I just knew it was something different. And so the last few years I've been studying this alignment thing. And it's funny because I looked up the definition a little while ago, and it's the proper positioning or state of adjustment of parts in relation to each other. Really doesn't sound very exciting.
Yeah, can you read that again?
Yeah, it's the proper positioning or state of adjustment of parts in relation to each other. So I think of like tire alignment, right? Parts aren't where they need to be, so you're putting them back into place. So that's the only definition you'll find of it. And so it's like, well, that isn't very exciting. But think of that from the perspective of a human being, ourselves as a human being. And we have thoughts, and we have bodies, and we have emotions, and we have a soul. And we have all of those that are trying to find alignment within ourselves. And we find ways that we can get them out of alignment really quickly. So the definition I've come up with is when our thoughts, our bodies, our life choices, and our directions all honor our core values. So now it's our beingness. How can we, and when we make decisions, we ask through that state, where do I feel it in my body? Is my body actually saying yes? Or is it from some state of should, have to, must, all that guilt and stuff? So it's just really about embodying our true selves.
So you're aligning to the components that are happening in your life, the things that you want to be there. So like your work, your purpose, your kids, your, family, friends, social time, all those things, but they also have to align back to you and to your core values and how you feel. Yeah,
and if we add the alchemy into the mix, all of these different personal parts of your life are the recipes that you put together to create this wonderful gold,
beautiful,
transmuted into gold.
Yeah, beautiful.
It came from you. I love your definition.
And the whole alchemist piece is, there's a lot of coaches and people saying, I can change you. If you follow my process, your life, your business, whatever will be changed. I really just think we're here to be catalysts for people, right? So that's the alchemist piece is perhaps I've been through things where I can put my hand back and say, come along, I can show you the way. But at the same time, I'm going to be looking for a hand ahead of me to show me the way and something as well, right? Like we're always going through this evolution. So I believe I can be an alchemist, a guide. I can help be a catalyst for that and, help you uncover yourself.
I like that, being a catalyst for each other, because we talked about that in our mentoring meetings. I remember saying to you how I felt like I'm not an expert, per se in any one area, but I know a lot of different things, or I have a lot of a variety of skill set. And you said to me, and it'll always stick with me, is that you don't have to be an expert, just maybe 5% or 10%, know that much more than somebody else in a certain area, or being able to, just like what you said, be the catalyst or guide somebody else based on that little bit more that So that stuck with me, and I love that. Yeah,
me too. And it also makes me consider sort of servant leadership, acknowledging, okay, right now I'm leading, but I'm also leading from the back. So you tell me what you need, tell me how I can get us there. And there's like an inbuilt humility to it, which I like, which you don't often find from leaders. And some of us have had some pretty awful leaders and managers and bosses. Have you had some experiences like that, and how did you react to those?
Yes, I have. And I am so grateful for them, because I don't think there's anything that shows you who you are more than actually being face to face with a leader who you don't align with. Because you get to see who you are. You get to see what you wouldn't do, what you won't accept. You lean into your own core values. I don't know about you guys, but certainly when I started my career, I didn't know who I was. Like, I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to figure out truly how to come home to myself, which, you know, I love helping other people do that too. But we're not, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'll have a day where I sit here with you and I'm like, oh, I've arrived. Oh, I know.
And then you'll have to share how you did it at that stage.
So
yeah.
The really toxic leaders, I've worked with a couple through my corporate career, and I've worked with a couple through my own business where parts of me said say no, because when you own your own business, you get to say no differently than when you're in a corporate environment working for that person or just got assigned to work with that person. And I've still said yes, because there's this part of me, depending on the situation, where I believe I might be able to have an influence on that leader. And yes, I have, and no, I haven't. Like, I've worked with some toxic leaders who just choose to not change, but then I can walk away from that, or work with leaders that actually you can start to help them see some of their behaviors and they can change. But in corporate, for sure, before I became a leader, I had a really toxic boss, and I will never forget when I became a leader, I sat down and wrote a list of everything I learned that I would commit to never doing to people. It changed me. It changed the core of who I was, for sure.
That's a good practice to go through. And I think, just as you said, we get to learn about ourselves when we deal with certain types of people or situations. And I think the biggest thing is our response, like how we react, right? And I know in the past I've been very reactive with people if they trigger me in a certain way. And that also is another layer of that, is your experiences and who you are and what your triggers are with others. So you do, if you're paying attention, you do truly get to learn about yourself in those instances. Yeah.
Because a lot of the time those triggers are an emotional internal trigger. You know, that person is doing something, but you're reacting internally to it. So it's about detaching a little and going, okay, what can I do? This is the situation that's happening. How do I react? But it's not easy in the moment to take that mini pause to get there. Yeah, or to find another way, which is something that you talk about a lot on your platform. Thanks. Tell us about another way, Laurie.
Yeah, I think we're experiencing it right now. So even as we're talking about sort of toxic bosses and toxic environments, I think there was a period of time where that was a lot of corporations. That was a lot of businesses. It was just that, you know, we were in the hustle grind. You give your soul, you work hard. Nobody knew there was another way, really. I would never have challenged a leader I worked with. Whereas today, people will stand up for themselves. This woman I ran into on the weekend, we were talking about some of the behaviors within the culture that were really, really wrong for women, like really wrong. I'm not going to go into it here, but I have lived through that time in business where things that you look now and think, how were they ever? I think some of the conversations I was involved in, I can't believe I wouldn't have stood up. Today, there would not be a question. So part of this other way, there is another way we are experiencing right now where everybody's voice matters, where we're starting to shift away from some of the toxic lies we've been sold. So a few of them are perfectionism, this constant need for perfect. And I am a recovering perfectionist. I literally have spent so much time in the past overanalyzing things and thinking it's got to be, tweaking it that 1 extra percent that didn't matter at all. So I think perfectionism, sacrifice, that you have to sell your soul in order to be successful. That I think is something we were sold. This busyness culture that we live in. Like, how are you? I'm busy. What is that? That isn't even a thing. I don't even understand what that is. Like,
that's a trigger word for me, by the way.
How are you? Trigger word for me too. It's like, I asked how you are. How is busy an answer?
What does busy mean?
What does it even mean? And this hyper people pleasing, and we could go on and on and on. So I believe there's another way, and I believe that other way is to find alignment and to hear your inner voice and to come home to who you are and show up that way. And when you show up as your true, genuine self, that's power. That's where all the power comes from. And it's an evolution. Like, we're all, including me, still taking baby steps towards what that can even look like. And how businesses can succeed from that place instead of the, some of the old perspectives.
I definitely think that there's a sea change, a change in the weather. Things like the Me Too movement that sort of came out from the celebrities and Hollywood nastiness that then has expanded into other industries. And then this equity, diversity, inclusion has sort of cemented itself as this is important. Like, your corporations and organizations will be more productive, more efficient. You'll get better profitability if you just treat everyone as a human being. It's like time. It's pretty obvious.
Focusing more on the people than the work, I find, right? The work will happen, I believe, if the people are happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's I'm thinking as you're both talking, this example popped in my head. So when I was still in sales, early in my sales career, I would have lived an hour from my office, as most people would have. We were salespeople out in the field. And we had an office in Southwestern Ontario. We had an office in Toronto. So the Toronto people too, the salespeople, would have lived between an hour and 2 hours from there. You didn't go to your office. You went out in the field and did what you were supposed to do. But we were going through this time in telecommunications where it was plummeting. So every company's results were struggling. And so at the time, our VP put in a policy that as a salesperson, you had to be in the office to sign at 8 a.m. so they could physically see you and you could sign a piece of paper. And at 5 p.m. back to the office to sign the piece of paper that you had done your day. So what that would have looked like just for me is an hour drive to the office, which was in London. And I may have been going to Windsor for the day, so that I would have lost 2 to 3 hours of productivity in my day by having to do this. And I think about this period of time where, thank God, I was #1 sales rep in the country. And I'm not saying that from a place of ego, but I had a bit of power, healthy power, leverage. Maybe leverage is a better word. And so I called my VP and I said, I don't understand what you're trying to do, but here's what it looks like for me. I can't speak for anyone else. You're taking 3 hours of productivity away from me. And I had to sign a contract that said if I ever fell 25% below in sales where I was at that moment, I would be mandated to do the same thing. So I feel really grateful that I had a good relationship with him. We were able to work through that. But think about that still. I still was under stress. I still had to sign this contract. And then I felt bad for all my peers because they still had to do it. And what do you think happened? Results went down further for everybody.
Yeah, obviously.
Because it doesn't make sense, right? So lack of trust in your people, creating chaos and contention. So you take a situation like that today, and I'm always saying, trust your people. Have people that take advantage of that trust. Yes, like we're all human, but for the most part, when you trust your people, if they would have done something instead to empower and trust, results would come out. And I wholeheartedly believe that. So for some reason, what you guys were saying, it just reminded me of that so long ago.
Yeah,
No, I
absolutely.
completely agree with that. We see a lot of conflicting, I think, egos at work where people want to have control, but they're not even controlling what they can control.
Right.
They're trying to control the things they can't control, and then it's taking away, their focus on, creating solutions, essentially. Yeah.
And COVID certainly challenged this with the whole remote, hybrid, whatever we have today. And I would say the leaders that are struggling are still the ones that can't figure out how to trust when their people are working from home. And there's still a lot of it, for sure.
There's still a lot. That's so spot on. Oh my God. You just open your LinkedIn and read the articles that complain about remote workers and layoffs and this and that. And so silly.
And
it's
everything
like so
contradicts itself too.
It does. And what's so sad is, like I always say when leaders challenge me on that, if you have an employee that you don't believe is working from home effectively, they were not working from their desk effectively in the office either.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm really not sure. Like, it's back to
point.
Leadership and trust and creating an environment where you bring out the best in people, for sure.
And Quint and I have had that conversation on the show, even because him and I need to trust each other that we have different roles, right? So we have to trust each other. We're taking away those pieces and working on them. And so far it's been working great. And I find we just have that nice relationship where we have faith in each other's abilities and we just let it happen. Yeah. Totally. And it makes such a better end product and collaboration and all those things.
I think so too. I did want to come back to the COVID, and we've been thinking of like the ways in the past, and there's another way, and COVID and remote work. I did read something that said that it's not looking so great for female workers right now, especially if they've got extra responsibilities like a kid at home, etc., because they're still having to juggle a lot more than what is understood in traditional society. What do you think about that?
It was interesting when you were saying when we were just talking about the diversity and inclusion and the Me Too movement and those things that have moved the needle, but COVID actually showed us the needle hasn't moved much from a female business perspective, because the statistics on the people harmed the most from financial work perspective were women in spades, which is, I mean, this pulls at my heart, because women are always going to be the nurturer. Like, that's, sorry, I shouldn't use the word always, because there's situations where that's not true, but women, we have the children and we do nurture the children, right? And women are powerful leaders, like, again, power in a beautiful way. Like, they have the ability. Men and women bring very different things to the table. I have worked with so many amazing male leaders and female leaders. Like, we just bring unique things to the table. And so we have a lot of work to do in this area. We have a lot of work to do to make sure women are on boards, to make sure they can have some time with their kids and come back and still be valued. We have a big journey ahead of us, and I think we're chipping away at it. My hope would be we don't have to do the training. We don't have to do the training on diversity and inclusion. We get to a place where it's just an intuition and a knowingness. Like, we've actually got to the other way, where
just what it is. Yeah.
Together, we're all human beings, and really, who brings the best to the table, and how do we all get into alignment together for that? It's a little esoterical, but that's where we have to get to if we're going to succeed.
Sometimes I get really frustrated because I don't think it's going fast enough.
It's not.
I've seen amazing changes in my life, from growing up as a kid in Zimbabwe, where it was illegal to be myself, and it still is illegal to be myself, and to coming to Canada, which is open-minded and people literally don't give a shit about, that sort of stuff, which is amazing. But then, as you said, the pandemic just shows us, good lords, we've been chipping away at certain things. We should be taking sledgehammers to them. You know?
We should.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That is a
I
great
like that.
quote.
We should,
Great
yeah,
quote.
write that one down, Quentin. It's going in
That's
the
our
show notes.
soundbite.
So we touched a little bit on the hustle culture, the anti-hustle culture. I wanted to get your thoughts. And did I say hussy? Anti-hussy.
Sorry, do that one.
Wait, who are you calling a hussy? I want to know.
It's probably because I watched this guy Matthew Hussey, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he talks about relationships, and anyway, I probably have him in my brain. The anti-hustle culture, and why you don't believe in it, and how do you see it show up right now, and do you think that it's changing at all? Because I've been hearing this for years, you see memes about it all the time, about hustle and grind and this and that and go after it. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's back to what we just taught, what Quentin just said. We need a sledgehammer. Human beings are just such interesting beasts. It's if we just paused, all of us, and just realized what can create more beauty, flow, love, and a real life, that we can reach the end of our days and say, that was a life. I think we'd all do things differently. So it's so confusing to me how we just don't. I think we've got to focus on being real, genuine, and that's it. We have to be real and genuine. And from that place, then freedom comes, and all of our best gifts can be shared. So I struggle how black and white we think everything has to be. And this is why I say I want to get to a place where we don't have to do the diversity training, because how we live, love, lead, how we show up. That's it. We show up understanding we all have gifts, and how do we bring those out in each other? And so we have a hustle culture, and that's who you have to be. You just have to hustle because that's what success equals, to all of a sudden the memes are all, we need anti-hustle. We need right, wrong, black, white. Everything is so polarizing. It just doesn't seem like the right way forward to me, that we go from hustle to anti-hustle.
Right. And I agree with you on the polarizing. It's just like I said before, everything contradicts itself these days, right? All the information we're receiving. So no wonder we're so confused and have anxiety, and we're, stressed out. It's like, well, what do you, it's almost like you need to just get rid of it all. And you're right. Just come back to that alignment with self, and what are my values? What makes me feel good? Yeah.
And I think about how easy it is to get caught in the traps, because as I was kind of writing a paper on these 7 toxic lies we've been sold, and I found myself doing the same thing of, okay, we have to move away from hustle. We have to move to something else. We have to move away. And then it just came to me, no, Laurie, you're doing the same thing. We're so brainwashed into believing if it isn't this,
we need to do something.
Right. So I really think this is where the practical and magical comes out in how you introduced me, is we can be both. We can be practical and magical. We can have hustle and harmony, because there are times where hustle's required. We don't have to attach all these negative connotations to that. A hustle, when you own your own business, there are seasons of hustle. Even in corporate, there's seasons. Quentin, you just finished your 2 projects. This week you missed biking because you had to do some hustle. And now you're going to go biking today to find your harmony. So it's sure that
I give you chills.
alignment thing again, right? There's seasons of everything. So instead we have a flow. And even then, we have focus, we have flow. They coexist. We have planning and we have play. They coexist. So I feel like we just need to, with all of it, get to a place of understanding how things can coexist. Not either or, just coexist.
Yeah. The either or is just too abrupt and too 100%. Like, if I think of it in terms of memes, like you got the little video gif of the hamster running around in the wheel, and then it suddenly stops and it flings itself off the wheel. It doesn't exist. You just go slow and steady.
Yeah.
Do you think the either or is also part, because it's sort of like right and wrong, it's not allowing for that gray area. Do you feel that either or is kind of part of that perfectionist piece?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because perfectionism says there is a black and white, there's a right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I'm starting to feel like a philosopher. I'm really challenging myself because I have been trained, as I believe we all have, to get to this place of right and wrong. What does it do? It keeps us out of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps us out of creativity. It keeps us out of hearing our intuition and actually finding this alignment thing. It is the opposite of that fully.
It's another perspective. Even find when I'm writing, sometimes I'll write and I'll want to say something, like a quote or something that's very typical you hear all the time, right? And I start to write and then I'm writing it. I'm like, why am I writing it that way? I'm writing it because I've heard it so many times. But why don't I just take a minute and try to write it my way?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant reminder to try not to slip into all those kind of, catchphrases and things that we always use. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the ones that just came up for me is, first of all, this is going to sound a little off center because I do get up at 4:30 in the morning, and it's for reasons
like every day.
Every day. I would not choose
Crazy
it.
girl.
This is not actually fully alignment for me. I'm going to say, my husband sets the alarm at 4:30. That's his thing, and we go to the gym, and then that's our. And yes, it is, but it's funny because our back to this sort of corporate brain mindset, the 5 a.m. club. Do you remember always hearing? And you had to be the 5 a.m. club to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
This is true for my husband. He is a morning person, so it creates great success for him to be a part of the 5 a.m. club. Me, I don't remember my workouts. And I get up. I've tried to just like go back to sleep, and I can't. So I might as well just get up and do something, right?
So funny.
It starts the day great. But if he weren't in my life, my rhythm would be very different. I would actually be out saying, hey, if you're the 7 a.m. club and you want to stay up till like 1 a.m. in the morning, that would be right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who said it had to be the 5 a.m. club to be successful? It's not. I'm not asking literally.
Yeah.
But it's become an ingrained belief system. Even to the point where you're like, good for you. Yeah. Well, why is that any different than if I worked out every day at 8 a.m.?
Right.
Right.
And by the way, I'm following the same perception because I'm doing it, right? But it is just, it's so interesting, these things that it's like this definition is equal to this.
And I do believe we can train ourselves to be a certain, to be a morning person, for example. I like the morning. My son will say to me, I'm not a morning person. Well, that's actually not true. It's because you tell yourself you're not a morning person. You can train yourself to be a morning person.
No, I'm defending Nick. He's not a morning person.
Your circadian rhythms want to be awake when the light is up, right? And
it's not up at 4:30.
It's not fair.
4:30 is a bit early.
Let the kids sleep in.
This morning, because we went to the gym at 7 this morning, and I said,
"You slept in."
We followed our circadian rhythms, and he's like, "You're right. I had a better workout when the
light was up." Yeah. Dr.
Good.
Andrew
Let's try it again
says
tomorrow.
to let the light in your eye before you even have a coffee. So
I believe wholeheartedly in that one. It does make a difference.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm going to defend your son too. Quentin and I are defending your son because I'm not that bright. Like, I'm awake. I'm walking around. But please don't ask me actually for any sort of creativity before noon.
I know he's like sleeping in the car on the way to school. Like he's sleeping. It's funny. He's such a grump.
Funny.
Well, I like asking all of our guests this, Laurie. What does connection mean to you?
I love the word connection. Don't even just, there's an example of alignment. Feel the word connection in your body, and it's pure joy. I think the definition of it to me is human to human, heart to heart, that we're truly seeing the other person, hearing their voice, and just sharing in that beautiful moment of what it feels like when we go heart to heart with another human being.
I love that. That's a good one. And I agree with you. The word connection just has this nice vibe to it. Yeah. And we say it a lot on this show.
Yeah. And it took us a couple of months. I want to say 3 months to decide on it, you know,
because we were going down the road of having something reinvention in our name, and then
recalibration.
Yeah. And then it just one day it kind of hit us, and it all came together. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if our guests want to get a hold of you, Laurie, where would they contact you? Actually, that reminds me. I just want to circle back to something. You have a good presence on Instagram and other social media, and I see you started something called Book Talk with Hawk. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So I am a seeker. I am an obsessive learner. And so I'm constantly reading, and I actually do like these book summaries of every book that I read, and they've kind of just been in the vault. I share them with the customers that I work with, because I found through the years, I would say, oh, here's a great book, and and people just wouldn't read them. And I had the aha that maybe everyone isn't like me and they don't love to read or seek, and so I started the book summaries, and my customers love them because they don't have to read the book, because they don't know to read the book. And so my son, this is a whole aside on millennials. I believe that you guys are probably millennials. You are all meant to change the world. I fully believe you are here to change the world in every capacity we talked about today. So when my children share something with me, they're both in they're all in their 20s. I listen. And so he said, Mom, separate the book talk. Just go out and share the books with people separate from everything else you do. And so I started Book Talk with Hawk. And that's what I do. I'm sharing a book every week, the top quotes, and then linking you to the summary that you can gather. And of course, for me, everything comes down to what bubbly goes with the book. And so there's also the champagne of choice or sparkling wine of choice for the week that goes with that book I'm reading. So
love it.
Find me at Book Talk with Hawk.
Book Talk with Hawk, HAWK.
Such a great idea. And I love how you do the Pop the Cork Fridays as well. How did that start?
Pop the Cork Fridays is a really emotional thing for me. And I always think, I don't want anyone to think I'm promoting alcohol as a thing because it's not that. It's so when I turned 50, I realized I was still really caught in the hustle, and I didn't know how to slow down, actually. And so turning 50, I just made some decisions about what the future needed to hold. And I made a commitment to myself that once a week on a Friday, I would slow down. So how would I do that? And the Pop the Cork was born, that on Friday afternoons, I would pop the cork and I would go out in nature, and my husband would come with me, and we would really just pause and embrace life and learn to play, learn to have more fun. And so it has stuck since then. I just turned 55. We pop the cork on Fridays, and I share it on Real Talk with Hawk. Because there's alignment in that of learning to have fun and slowing down. And I go through seasons where I'm not, it's not actually alcohol. I do the non-alcoholic bubbly.
Mhm.
There's all different ways to embrace this. It could just be a bubbly, whatever, but the bubbles and the slowing down and all of that.
What a nice ritual. I love that.
Yeah, perfect way to end the week and start the weekend. Yeah.
Well, that does it for today's episode. Thanks for joining us today with our friend Laurie Hawkins. And where can our guests get a hold of you, Laurie?
Yeah, so find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Hawkinspired, and the Real Talk with Hawk or Book Talk with Hawk.
And we'll make sure that we put all that in the show notes, as well as everything we discussed today with some great tips and takeaways. Thank you so much for being here, Laurie. So glad to have you. Great conversation. I really think our audience is going to enjoy this episode. So thank you for being here.